Alright, so what's up guys, and today we will be talking about the Constantine Rise of Christianity mod for Rome 2 Total War, which is a mod that essentially places the campaign into the time period of 311 AD, or during the Tetrarchy Civil War, or during the, the war between the four parts of the empire. And as the name suggests, you do essentially have the option to control Constantine, but you can also play as the various other Roman factions, which is kind of interesting, although Constantine is by far, I think, the strongest faction in this mod, because you control essentially the entirety of Western Europe. And your Roman factions will obviously have a lot of military power, and overall you do have some nice bonuses, fierce warriors and willpower, so you do have pretty good bonuses. That's not to say that the other Roman factions are pretty shit. They're actually pretty good. So this actually makes for a pretty good variety. You can obviously play as the Maxentius Augustus faction, which is sort of a more conservative, but you do have Carthage, and you can easily beat Constantine. It's not that difficult. You also have a bunch of other factions, the Eastern empires, you have the Germanic tribes, you also have the Huns actually, which is kind of interesting. So this sort of makes this mod very similar to Attila Total War, or Total War Attila. And I suppose if you don't have the money to buy Attila, you can also just play this mod on Rome 2 and be happy about it. The factions are there's four obviously factions, not just two, or four Roman factions. They're very similar, however, to the Attila ones. The West is much more stable though, and the units are also pretty similar. So let's take a look at the campaign map. Alright, so the campaign map itself, you can see it's very similar obviously to the default Rome 2 campaign map. However, you do have Britain, and obviously this will be, as Constantine, you will mostly be fighting down here, conquering Italy and stuff like that. In Africa probably won't see that much action, but you might, obviously. So the one thing that this mod has been sort of unique with is that instead of the various cultural things, you do have, well, it's still called culture, but in a sense it's just religion. You have Christian and imperial. So that's nice that he actually didn't just make it all Roman. He actually added various religions, which is, I think, very good. One thing that many people have been complaining about, however, is how sluggish and how long it always takes to fight the battles, because you do have increased obviously unit sizes, and the battles just take way too long. So the author has actually released various additional mods or sub mods for this mod, and which obviously increase the speed of the campaign. You can now, well, I don't have it added, but you can essentially recruit and or build buildings and research technologies in just one turn, which is great. You can now have a very swift campaign, but you can also obviously play without them. Also, he added a submod which increases the speed of the battles, and I think it's quite nice, this campaign. It's obviously not as you could say that it's not as grand as the Grand Campaign originally was. Obviously, as Constantine, you do want to take out Rome, and you can fight with the various Celts, but they are not even close to being on the same power level as you are. And I think as Constantine is obviously the easiest. Constantine is obviously the easiest campaign. You already have various units on the front, so it's essentially like playing Attila Total War, but with the Western Roman Empire being actually good. So let's take a look at the various units. Obviously, you have a lot of Germanic or sort of Gallic, like auxiliary units. You have a lot of like auxilium militaris foederati or something like that. I'm really not that great at saying all these names, but essentially you do have a lot of auxiliary units, and your infantry is obviously not the standard legionary cohorts that we're used to from original Rome 2. You do have the comitatus ones that were more common during that era. You also have the Palatina. Obviously, he hasn't added, unique voiceover, so when you click the units, they still say like legionary cohorts, but it's they're different units essentially, but you do have a wide range of various units. The difference is obviously pretty like none between the various Roman factions. They're very similar. Well, their shields change, I suppose, but the Roman factions are all extremely similar to each other, which is obviously reasonable. They were pretty similar even back then. So when playing as a Roman against a Roman, it's very sort of mundane, but the various Celtic, even the Huns have obviously various units, but they're obviously not that well developed as the bigger factions and as the Roman factions. And one thing that I found actually interesting is that the Eastern Roman Empire doesn't actually have that many auxiliary units, which is good because they didn't actually have access to Celtic units back then. So I really like the level of detail that went in creating this mod, and let's take a look at some of these units now actually. Alright, so let's take a look at the units. You can obviously see that they're not the standard legionary cohorts from Rome 2, but however they do actually resemble more the Attila units than the Rome units. They're more medieval, and actually even the combat resembles a bit medieval 2 more than Rome 2, because of obviously how long it takes, but it's still just Rome 2, but with the various different units. They're much less standardized, they're more of like a medieval rebel, I suppose. You do have the Celtic auxiliary units, which are obviously available to you as the Western Romans. And even the cavalry is very similar to that. You do have the standard ones, but you also have the more auxiliary-ish looking ones. So overall, I do have to say that these units are extremely well done, and yeah, I have to say they're just great overall. So overall, I do have to say that this is one of the better mods out there if you're looking for more of a new sort of gameplay experience. If you're looking for just the same Rome 2 ones but just more in depth, then I would stay away from this one. But however, if you're looking for a new campaign or are tired of the same old Rome 2 campaign and Attila campaigns and want to play sort of an in-between period or one of the various Roman civil wars, obviously, then either play the Augustus Imperial campaign or play this one. This one's actually, I think, much better than then, because it sort of introduces the various religions, and it just makes overall the experience much better. So I have to say this is one of the better mods out there, and you should definitely check it out.